Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayaṁ Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Satashishiman. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayaṁ Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Satashishiman. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 13, The Appearance of Lord Varaha. Today we'll be going over text number 42. Saṁsthāpaya enām jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema asyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejaḥ agnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ. Please chant.
Saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
Saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ sa-tejo ivāraṇāv
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ sa-tejo gnimivāraṇāv adhāḥ
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnimivāraṇāv
yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv saṁsthāpaya enām. Raise this earth.
raise this earth
Jagatāṁ, both the moving and
both the moving and
sa-tasthuṣāṁ,
sa-tasthuṣāṁ
non-moving.
non-moving
Lokāya,
lokāya
for their residence.
for the residents
Patnīm,
patnīm
wife.
wife
Asyai,
you
you are. Mātaram, the mother.
the mother
Pitā, the father.
the father
Vidhema,
vidhema
do we offer.
do we offer
Cha,
cha
also.
also
Asyai,
asyai
unto the mother.
unto the mother
Namasā,
sa
with all obeisances.
all obeisances
Saha,
saha
along with.
along with
Tvayā,
tvayā
with you.
yasyāṁ
Yasyāṁ, in whom.
in whom
sva-tejaḥ,
sva-tejaḥ
by your own potency.
by your own potency
Agnim,
agnim
fire. likened. Arano, in the arani wood. Adhāḥ, invested. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O Lord, for the residential purposes of all inhabitants, both moving and non-moving, this earth is your wife, and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in the arani wood. Purport. The so-called law of gravitation which sustains the planets is described herein as the potency of the Lord. This potency is invested by the Lord in the way that an expert sacrificial brahmana puts fire in the arani wood by the potency of Vedic mantras. By this arrangement, the world becomes habitable for both moving and non-moving creatures. The conditioned souls who are residents of the material world are put in the womb of Mother Earth in the same way the seed of a child is put by the father in the womb of the mother. This conception of the Lord and the conditioned souls are devoted, and the earth as the father and the mother is explained in Bhagavad Gita 14:14. Conditioned souls are not devoted to the motherland in which they take their birth, but they do not know their father. The mother is not independent in producing children. Similarly, material nature cannot produce living creatures unless in contact with the Supreme Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us to offer obeisances unto the mother along with the Father, the Supreme Lord, because it is the Father only who impregnates the mother with all energies for the sustenance and maintenance of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare saṁsthāpayaināṁ jagatāṁ sa-tasthuṣāṁ lokāya patnīm mātaram pitā vidhema cāsyai namasā saha tvayā yasyāṁ sva-tejo gnim ivāraṇāv adhāḥ. O Lord, for the residential purposes of all inhabitants, both moving and non-moving, this earth is your wife, and you are the Supreme Father. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you, along with Mother Earth, in whom you have invested your own potency, just as an expert sacrificer puts fire in the adhāḥ wood. We are continuing this 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are discussing the appearance and also different pastimes of Lord Varaha. Even though it seems to come sort of in succession, we can understand that in this chapter, it was two different instances, two different appearances of the Lord that are being described. One simply where he lifts up the earth, and one where he fights and kills the demon Hiranyaksha. And, devotees have been discussing and describing this in the classes. And right now, we are going through different prayers offered to the Lord by the sages. These verses, they start appearing after the Lord kills the demon Hiranyaksha, but we can also understand it can also be applied to the pastime where the Lord lifts the earth and saves the earth from the devastating waters. And the sages, they're offering various prayers here. This one in particular, all of these verses are very nice, but this one, understanding the translation, is very, very poetic, where the sages are comparing the Lord investing his potency, investing his transcendental energy into the earth, and comparing that to the expert sacrificer that puts fire within the adhāḥ wood. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but I had absolutely no idea what this was talking about, because I've never done a fire sacrifice in my whole life, nor have I had any formal training in it. So I researched a little bit into exactly what this was describing, and because of our modern commodities, it's very easy. We have all these lighters, so many different ways where we can spontaneously combust different organic material to get fire. But previously, these great sages, they didn't have to depend on these material resources and the using up of these different resources. They could simply ignite these fires by prayer and by mantra. And the specific process at the beginning of the sacrifice, the brahmanas, they would have two different sticks, and these are the adhāḥ sticks. And one is called I don't remember the Sanskrit terms, but one of them is compared to the father stick, and one is the mother. And, they put one on the ground like this, they stack one on top like this, and they do some friction, but they also offer some prayers, inviting Agni to present himself and to, sanctify and purify the sacrifice in which they are doing. And it's described, and we can understand by the Vedic knowledge, that within wood, the fire already exists. We have some idea, due to the amazement of scientific advancement, that the fire simply appears out of nowhere, and it simply appears by chance. But for one who understands with higher Vedic knowledge, we can see that the fire is actually present within the wood. And the sages, by their potency and by their prayer, they invite this fire to present itself from these pieces of wood. Obviously we can understand the results of friction, but specifically, chanting these Vedic mantras, they're inviting the personality of Agni to be present at this sacrifice, and inviting the Supreme Lord in his form of yajna to become present. And we can see anybody can start some sort of fire. Anybody can have a bonfire in their backyard. Similarly, anybody can present some sort of statue. Anybody can make some sort of form. But we have deities, we have pictures which we consider to be non-different from the Supreme Lord, not because simply it exists in some shape or some sort of form that represents the teachings of and the descriptions of the Vedic knowledge, but because we've invited the Lord to actually come here and present himself within the deity. So, similarly, just because you have some sort of fire doesn't mean that Agni is present or that the personality of Yajna is actually there. But one has to pray, one has to invite these personalities to actually come and take part in this sacrifice. So I thought that, that was very good information, and it's very relevant here because for one who is a materialist, for one who doesn't have higher knowledge, we can see that they are thinking that life is coming from matter. But we can see here, these sages, they're describing how this matter has actually been invested by the potency of the Lord. And we can see Prabhupada in the first sentence of his purport, he says something that to modern scientists might be very controversial. Srila Prabhupada says that the so-called law of gravitation which sustains the planets is described herein as the potency of the Lord. So this so-called law of gravity was, again, so-called discovered because, it was already existing, but because one person wrote it down before anybody else that they knew. Sir Isaac Newton, he was once sitting under an apple tree, and he was doing some scholarly research, and an apple fell on his head. And because this apple fell on his head, he got some great, profound realization of the law of gravity. And we can see that this law of gravity, it's considered to be a scientific law. And their description is that, when you throw something up, it must come down. And they say it's because of the law of gravity. But what they don't really talk so much about, they teach in schools so much about this law of gravity, is actually what they call the theory of universal gravity. And this is a scientific theory in which they transpose this gravity that we find on Earth to the rest of the universe. And they say that we see that this law, it acts on this planet. So they say that this law of gravity must be what's keeping everything together in the whole universe. And Srila Prabhupada, he would simply laugh at this claim. Because, he would make so many points. Oftentimes on the morning walks with his disciples, they would talk about a lot of these different scientific points. And we can understand, even though this law of gravity works, there are things like airplanes, which can, even though they're so heavy, they can circumvent this law of gravity. Srila Prabhupada, he would often use the example of a needle and a log, where he said that the needle, it's very, very light and it's very, very small. But when you put it within the water, it sinks. However, when you put a big log, no matter what the size, it will float, no matter what the weight is. So Srila Prabhupada, he would give different examples like this. He also said that within this earth planet, there is so much water. And when I actually first heard this, it's like one of the first things that really made me question everything about modern science was there's so much water on this earthly planet. If you think about it, there's billions and billions of gallons of water. And they say that the earth is a ball. And they say that this law of gravity, it's keeping all of this water pushed up against the surface of the earth. But if you do the mathematical calculations, that gravity would be so strong that you wouldn't even be able to lift your body off of the ground. It would be so intense and so powerful that to keep this water on the planet Earth, the mathematical equations actually wouldn't make sense at all. So Srila Prabhupada, he would often very much laugh at this idea of the law of gravity and this universal law of gravitation, that everything is bound to each other based off of the mass. And the scientists, they're so expert. They present something small that's true, like, you see, if you throw something up, it must come down. And then they expound it to some big lie. But they present it with some small bit of truth. And to back up all of their equations, they say that, okay, even though the sun, it's a fiery planet and it must be made out of gas, it must have a core of metal that's so dense, that's so densely packed that it's attracting all of the planets to revolve around it. And Prabhupada said also that this idea that the planets are revolving around the sun because of gravity, Prabhupada said, if the sun's gravitational pull is so strong, it would pull the moon away from the earth and pull it into its orbit. But we see that that's never happened. So scientists, they concoct so many weird things just to make their theories make sense. And they make all of these theories because they don't want to admit that the seed-giving father of everything in this material universe, the source of everything, material and spiritual, is actually coming from Krishna. They don't want to admit that. Why? Because then they'll have to accept that there's something that they can't control. They'll have to accept that they aren't the supreme controller. They'll have to accept that they are not the supreme enjoyer. And they'll have to accept that they are not the Lord of everything they survey. And by propagating this idea of modern science, they're trying so hard, so much to try and become the Lord of everything, the controller of everything. They're trying to control the food so it doesn't spoil. They're trying to control the temperature so you can enjoy no matter what the external temperature is. They're trying to create so many different things. They're trying to even, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj will often give the example about how they're saying that they're trying to prevent death. And we can see scientists, they put on so many different bluffs like this. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say that these scientists, they propound all these crazy ideas simply so they can cheat the less intelligent people to get money. The scientists, when they first so-called went to the moon, I was just listening this morning to a morning walk, and oftentimes, there's people now that say, Prabhupada, he said this about going to the moon, he said this about going to the moon. On this morning walk in 1975 in Hawaii, his disciples straight up asked Srila Prabhupada, they said, previously you said they may have gone to the moon, then previously you said they went to Rahu, and previously you said this. Prabhupada was like, actually, they've never gone to this moon. They've never gone to the moon. It's completely crazy. Maybe they've gone here, maybe they've gone there, but it's impossible to think that they have gone to the moon. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples were saying, there's propaganda now that they actually shot this in the Arizona desert. And Srila Prabhupada, he was very much laughing and enjoying the sheer stupidity of these modern scientists. And what they did was that after they so-called went to the moon, they started selling plane tickets. About now you can pay this much money and you can go to the moon. And Srila Prabhupada was like, just see their rascaldom. And we can see so many different things like this. In that same morning walk, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they brought up this concept of cancer research, where if you actually look at it, so much of the government's money, so much of the government's spending goes towards this cancer research. But if you see, practically, cancer is exactly the same as it was 100 years ago. And all they've simply done is get so much money, like billions and billions of dollars. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they were quoting one specific study where so much money, millions of dollars, and their end conclusion was, we're no further to preventing cancer than we were previously before this. It's crazy. It's insanity. It's absolute madness. But we can see the scientists, they're simply driven by lust, anger, and greed. They're driven by the modes of material nature, and they're simply just trying to cheat people. We can see in the material concept that one who thinks they have a little more intelligence, they'll try to use that intelligence to exploit the less intelligent. Which is why, it's so important for us to distribute these books of Srila Prabhupada so people will no longer be cheated by these mundane scientists. And we have to very much and very strongly make these points, Srila Prabhupada, he very much wanted this preaching against modern scientists. He very much wanted that we preach that life comes from life. And Srila Prabhupada, he's very much speaking of this point within this purport. And he's very much emphasizing that actually Krishna is the supreme father of everybody. And oftentimes, Srila Prabhupada would engage in not exactly friendly, but sort of staged arguments with his disciples. And actually hearing this, it's very, very good so we can actually preach to other people. Because oftentimes Srila Prabhupada's disciples would say, oh, in Bhagavad Gita it says like this, in the Srimad Bhagavatam it says like this. And Srila Prabhupada would say, okay, but I don't accept Bhagavad Gita. I don't accept Srimad Bhagavatam. So everything you're saying is just completely useless to me. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they would say so many things. And Srila Prabhupada, he said that, okay, do you have a father? And they would say yes. Does your father have a father? I would say yes. Does your father's father have a father? And they said yes. So Srila Prabhupada said, everything we can perceive in this world, all life is coming from some sort of father, is coming from some sort of seed-giving father. So similarly, we can see that Krishna is the supreme father. Krishna is the supreme father of everything. And Srila Prabhupada would also use this example to defeat and fight impersonalism, where you see you are coming from some sort of personal source, which is your father, and your father's father also came from some personal source. So what is this concocted nonsense that you're saying that, but actually all that ultimately came from nothing? Where do we see that? We don't see it at all. So Srila Prabhupada, he very much wanted to present this philosophy and this idea of life comes from life. Because when you actually present it, you cannot defeat it. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples on these morning walks, they would often be in, so much astoundment. Like Srila Prabhupada would make some point like this about life comes from life and give some example. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples were like, just see, you can't fight this logic. You can't defeat it no matter what argument you put. You can't even find any flaw in it at all because it's so simple. We can see that there's no possible incidence in anywhere. You can look anywhere. There's no example of life coming from matter. There's no example at all. Everything, life, comes from life. And we can even see here, Srila Prabhupada is describing both things that are material and spiritual, all come from that same seed-giving Father. And in this canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we've seen that even though it might seem like Lord Brahma is the creator, without the empowerment of the Supreme Lord, Lord Brahma would not be able to create anything. Because in that instance also, Krishna he has invested his potency. He has invested and given all the ingredients to Lord Brahma so he can create. So even in any instance that you look at it, we can see that Krishna is actually the supreme and seed-giving Father of all moving and non-moving creatures. And even if we won't accept coming to this conclusion by logic, Krishna himself says so in Bhagavad Gita. If you can go to the 14th chapter, Krishna says in text 4, but I'll start with text 3 because it sort of connects together. Krishna says, Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garba dadyam yaham sambhava sarvabhutanam tato bhavati bharata. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. And then in the next verse, Krishna says that Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiyaha tesham brahma mahad yonir aham bija prada pitā. That it is to be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature. And I am that seed-giving Father. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in this verse it is clearly stated that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but on every planet, even on the highest where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities within the earth. There are living entities even within the water and within the fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their previous deeds. So we can see here multiple things are being discussed. If you could pull up the 40th text of Brahma Samhita, Srila Prabhupada, he makes a very amazing point about this verse. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda-koti, koti shvashesha vasudadi vibhuti binnam, tad brahma nishkalam anantam ashesha bhutam, govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Srila Prabhupada says about this phrase, vibhuti binnam, that this means that within all of the material universes, within all these different planets, they're actually made of a different kind of atmosphere. And within that atmosphere, there's a specific type of living entity that's meant to live in that particular environment. And Srila Prabhupada, he would often say, just see, us human beings, we're not able to live within the water. But we can see, even on this planet, there are living entities that thrive within the water. But we think, oh, just because I cannot go to some other planet, that there's no life. And we can see that previously, scientists thought that by boiling water, bringing it to 112 degrees Fahrenheit, that they would kill all of the living entities within the water and completely purify it. And, like it says, previously, about 50 years ago, if you put that on your exam paper, you would get 100%. But now, if you put that same answer, 0. Why? Because now they've discovered that actually there's living organisms that can live even within boiling water. So, just because we cannot experience something for ourselves doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Just because it's not something that we've seen doesn't mean the phenomenon doesn't exist. When the British explorers first went to Africa and they saw the first giraffe, they were so shocked. And when they came back and they told everybody else, nobody believed them. Like, you're telling me that there's a horse with a 10-foot neck that can eat leaves off the branches of the tree? There is no possible way. This is scientific, this is historical fact, that we can see that this same thing happened. And nobody believed it till they actually brought pictures, they actually brought people to come see it. It's crazy, right? People say that, how can there be a 10-headed Lord Brahma? How can there be a God with an elephant's head? How can there be sages that remembered all the 4 Vedas? How is it possible? But we can practically see, just 100 years ago, nobody believed in the existence of a giraffe. And now you can go to downtown Atlanta, or they probably don't have one in downtown Atlanta, actually. But I'm saying, do they have a giraffe there? Do we know? Seriously? Dude, that's crazy. So even you can go to downtown Atlanta, all of the brothers in Atlanta, they can go and they can see a giraffe. And to them, they're like, oh yeah, a giraffe? Why not? Because they can practically go see it. But we can see just how much faith we put in our material process of seeing, but how useless it actually is. Prabhupada said, we're putting so much faith in just what we can see with our small 2 eyes, which are bound to so many different kinds of faults. And because one of Prabhupada's disciples, they were saying, oh, but I saw the moon landing on the TV. Srila Prabhupada was like, how foolish are you? Your eyes, they cheat you all the time. They cheat you in so many different ways. And we can see that these senses that are within the material body of the living entity, they're actually so useless, and we put so much faith in these senses, but they're so useless. It's even scientifically proven that if you were at the scene of, for example, if you're at the scene of a car accident, and you might have seen something with your eyes, but then somebody tells you some added detail that happened, you'll literally envision that you saw that while you were there. This is scientific proof that they've given this to people that have had different experiences, and they change their story based on what somebody else said. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that this person was wearing the blue shirt, but there was nobody there with the blue shirt. But they remember it happening, and they have the memory in their mind, and they think that they saw it. So we can see just how small and how foolish our material senses are, but we put so much faith within these material senses. Another thing is, the scientists, they have to accept that there can only be life on planet Earth, Otherwise, if there was life on all other planets, their whole Big Bang theory would be completely foolish. Why? Because they say that so many different things happen by chance, but the Earth planet is the only one that, had the exact distance from the sun. It has the exact tilt, so it doesn't get burned and it doesn't get too cold. And it has the exact atmosphere with a certain combination of oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen. It has, just by chance, trees which take in the air that we breathe and give us the air that we need. All this happened by chance. But if it were to happen that actually on every single planet within the whole universe, that there was a specific atmosphere for which life could be possible, their idea would seem completely crazy. But they've brainwashed everybody into thinking that actually there's billions of planets within this universe. But out of those billions of planets, there's only life on one of these planets. Because otherwise, their whole idea of this big chance singularity concoction wouldn't make any sense at all. That every single planet has an atmosphere designated to facilitate life. But we can see that it's described here in the Bhagavatam that Krishna, he specifically designs atmospheres by his potency by which we can actually live. It's by the supreme divine arrangement of Krishna that all of these things exist. Like, if you think about how amazing it is that you can plant a seed within the ground that you get from something that you eat. You can't consume it. Most of these seeds, you don't get actual nutritional value from. But if you plant that same seed within the ground, a whole nother plant will grow, in which you can get nourished and nourished more and more. The trees all around us, they're taking in the carbon dioxide we breathe, and they're producing oxygen, which we need to live. This planet, it's made of 70% water, and we need water in order to live. Water is actually what cleanses our body of all of the different contaminants. It processes all of the different things that go into our bloodstream, and because of that water, we're allowed to excrete all of those toxins. So many different things. It's so perfectly designed, it's so perfectly arranged, but they say it all happened by chance. If it all were to happen by chance, how could, all of this be going on as it has for as long as it has? If everything was just to happen by chance, somehow or other, some asteroid must have and this is what they say, come by the Earth and just put its orbit out, and then that took it out of an ice age or something like that. They make so many different crazy ideas, but they have to make all these crazy ideas because their foundational understanding is absolutely insane. And Srila Prabhupada, he makes other points here, in which everything is coming through the material nature, which is like the mother. And we can see that, we make this distinction between material and spiritual when actually it's just the energy of the Lord. But for us, because we are conditioned, because we are in this state, we see, okay, this is material, this is spiritual. But the example is often given of that of an electrical outlet. When the electricity is pumped into the building, there's no specific outlet for, okay, this is for the fan, this is for the light bulb, this is for that, this is for this. The electric source, it simply supplies the electrical energy. However, we can choose to use that electrical energy for different types of purposes. And we can see that most of the people in this material world, they're using the energy of the Lord for a material purpose. But those who are completely Krishna conscious, for them, there's no conditioning, there's no contamination. For the pure devotees, they're able to see everything just as, how may I use this in the service of the Lord? People use the same microphone for doing all these disgusting and ear-deafening rock and roll concerts, but we can use the same microphone for talking about the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So we can see that for the devotees of the Lord, they see the same material nature. Oftentimes, people on book distribution, they ask, oh, as a monk, what do you see? Expecting that I see all sunshine, rainbows, and some experience as if you're on psychedelics or something like that. But I'm no, I see the same grass that you do. I see the same trees that you do. But the difference is I see, or I try to see everything directly in relation to the Father of everything, the seed-giving Father which everything actually comes from. Because without Krishna's energy, without Krishna putting into motion all of these aspects of the material nature, none of it would actually happen. And we can see that the universal maintenance, annihilation, destruction, it goes on by the breathing of Mahavishnu. All of these things that we see, if we try and take the seed-giving father out of it, of course we have to come to some weird concocted conclusion, because it's like almost like we're trying to drive with a blindfold on. We're purposely blinding ourselves to something that's so blatantly obvious. And Srimad Bhagavatam, it's the highest philosophy, but a lot of its points are very practical and are very easy to understand. That's why when we distribute these books and we share people the knowledge of Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Nectar of Devotion, and all of Srila Prabhupada's books, people are able to see that, wow, this actually makes so much sense. Because we can see, and Srila Prabhupada, he gave so many different examples that I've quoted, that this is actually what makes practical sense. Srila Prabhupada also within his purport, he makes this point that the mother is not independent in producing children. Nowadays, because of the propagation of the modern feminist movement, they say that actually the woman is more important than the man, and even within our own congregation, people have been preached to like this, that they say, the woman is more powerful than the man because it's because of the woman that the child is born. But we can see without the potency of the seed-giving father, the womb of the woman is completely useless. And we can see now, because of modern scientific advancement, they're actually able to, because of the seed from the seed-giving father, they're able to create life without the occupation of a womb. They're able to, obviously it's still some sort of, womb-like environment, which they stimulate through different chemicals and everything like that. But even if they created that environment and they put it in a jar and they shook it up as much as they want, there would be no chance of creating anything. But because of the seed there of the seed-giving father, is life actually able to manifest? So we can see that, especially now because of modern feminism and everything like that, the role of everything has been so turned topsy-turvy, and people are becoming so distressed because of this. But when we come to the actual understanding, it makes so much practical sense that, without the seed-giving father, life cannot occur. But Srila Prabhupada says here that Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us to offer obeisances unto the mother along with the Father, the Supreme Lord, because it is the Father only who impregnates the mother with all energies for sustenance and maintenance of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. So just because the mother isn't independent doesn't mean that we just, forget about the mother and just, like they do with the cow, like they do with the old women in the senior homes, they just forget about it and say, oh yeah, just kill them, there's no use. Even during the COVID time, there was propaganda that, yeah, all these old people, they're the ones dying sick of COVID, why don't we just kill all of them? Because, then we won't have to spend so much money just taking care of these people that are going to die of COVID anyway. And we can see that nowadays there's people don't care about the mother at all. Vishnu Chitta Prabhu, a couple of times within a couple of his classes, he quoted this story of the mother that took the phone from the child. And then the child came with like a big bat and he hit the mother over the head, got his phone and just sat back on the couch. So it isn't that because the mother isn't independent, we just disregard the mother altogether. But we can see that the mother is made so important because of its contact with the seed-giving father. Similarly, we should see everything within this material nature in relation to its Supreme Father, in relation to the seed-giving father. Just previously, yesterday in Suresh Prabhu's class, he was describing how amazing and beautiful the devotees are when they're engaged in the service of the Lord. And we can practically see that, the people, when they engaged in the service of the Lord, oftentimes people would come up to Srila Prabhupada and tell him, wow, your disciples, they're so bright-faced. They're so effulgent. What is this? And we can see it's because they're acting in accordance with Krishna. They're acting in accordance with the seed-giving Father of everything. They have the perfect understanding that this body, even though it's made of the 26 different elements that are described, Krishna talks about them in Bhagavad Gita, it's also described in Srimad Bhagavatam, even though these material elements are there, without the potency, without the invested energy of Krishna, without Krishna being that seed-giving Father, this body, which is made just out of matter, it wouldn't have any life at all. It wouldn't have any purpose, wouldn't have any function at all. So those who are actually intelligent, they use this human form of life for engaging in the service of Krishna, because Krishna has given them this life. Krishna has given them this material body. Everything about their life has been given to them by Krishna. And we can see, specifically those in this Krishna consciousness movement, everything has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. Everything that we have, even the food that we eat, the program that we have, the schedule that we have, the friends that we have, everything has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. Everything that we have. And it's amazing if you actually think about how dark this world would be if Srila Prabhupada hadn't come to the West and given us everything. We owe so much to Srila Prabhupada that we can't possibly repay the debt. Similarly, we owe so much to, it's described all of the different debts that one has, the debts to the forefathers, the debts to the Supreme Lord, the debts to the mother, the debts to the person who birthed the child, so many different debts. But it's actually not possible for us to really repay these debts. So the only possible thing we can do is engage in the service of those who have given us this wonderful opportunity. And, Srila Prabhupada, this service of book distribution, it pleased him so much. Srila Prabhupada was so pleased, in his final days, he wouldn't get up for anything, but he would sit up just to hear the book distribution results. Especially with this Bhaktivedanta library party. He was so happy that full sets of his books were going out, and university professors, the intellectual classes of society, were placing standing orders of his books to have in their offices, to have in their libraries. So we can see, so many things pleased Srila Prabhupada. One time here in Atlanta, Srila Prabhupada said, what pleases me the most is simply that you love Krishna. But, and that's obviously true. We can see, though, that this book distribution, it pleased Srila Prabhupada so much. And we can see how important this book distribution is, just by reading through a couple paragraphs of Srila Prabhupada's books, the amazing and immense understanding that's there. And without this understanding, people would just keep on being cheated by these rascal scientists, by these impersonalists. Even people that you meet on the streets that have read Bhagavad Gita, like Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu and I, we were just at Body, Mind, Spirit, Columbus, and the second day we were there on Sunday, the first thing that I saw when I walked into the event, there was maybe a 20-year-old Mataji just sitting on the couch, and she was reading the Bhagavad Gita. Not Prabhupada's Gita, though. Just some mundane interpretation that presented it in like poetry and like took all of like the God concepts out of it. But luckily, we happened to be there at that event by Krishna's mercy. And this person, actually when I walked by them, I was like, is that the Bhagavad Gita? And they were like, oh yeah. I was like, interesting. And I just walked in, and she said that she was actually going to leave because she had just found out about the event as she was going on her walk, and she was sort of just there. But she was like, when she saw me, she was convinced that she should stay. And she only went to 2 tables the whole time that she was there at the event, and then she just left. She went to some like Ayurvedic tea guy, and then she came to our table, and she bought a set of Srila Prabhupada's books. And I was showing her how the Bhagavad Gita as it is so special, and it's so different than anything else that you'll find in this material world. And she was so happy. She was so pleased to simply receive the books of Srila Prabhupada. So we can see that we should keep on going with this book distribution to make everybody else so supremely fortunate and not be cheated by these rascals and fools that are propagating all of this so-called knowledge within this material world. And give them the real knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, nectar of devotion, science of self-realization. All of these books, even one line can completely change one's life. So I'll end my class here. Sorry there was, so many different things that could be said, but I just spoke on a few of them. If people have some questions, comments, or corrections, we can discuss those now. Rishi Kumar Prabhu.
You made that nice point about how scientists supposedly make some sort of artificial womb to facilitate the seed of a father, and there's no use for the womb without that seed. And we can see that, what is it on?
It needs to be flicked on the bottom.
So scientists now sometimes get proud about this idea of making some sort of artificial womb, that look, we're so close to making life or something like this.
Yeah.
We can see in the Bhagavatam, in the 6th canto, this is mentioned, and other places, I think also. There were two sages who, they lost their semen when they saw Urvashi. So they kept that semen in a pot, just a pot or a pitcher of some substance. And then later that turned in, that two babies were born out of that were also great sages. Agastya and Vashishta were born out of it. So yeah, that was already done easily with the pot.
They put it in the dirt?
No, in a pot, in a pitcher. There was one other thing. Can I make one other comment? Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
On a different topic. Since you read the about this earth being lifted up, I wanted to try to relate what I heard from my spiritual master about this. How there's the Bu, Buvar, and Swa, which are mentioned in the beginning of the Gayatri mantra, all those places that the sun touches, the sunlight touches when it's going in its orbit. So then there's Mount Meru in the middle of this, starting from this earthly planetary system going up. And the sun, he travels up it for half the year, and then spirals down it for half the year. And then so that we've got our small like Earth globe, but then there's more Earth than that. It's like, Bhumandala. There's all these different mountains. There's Mount Meru in the middle, and then some more mountains going out, and it goes all the way up till the edge of the universe, which is like an egg shape, Brahmanda. So in the middle of the universe, kind of like a plate, going all the way up to the edge of some mountains and whatnot. But there's a verse in the Bhagavatam, I think in the 5th canto he was mentioning. In this purport, there's a big chunk Srila Prabhupada puts from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sanskrit, who's an expert astrologer. And it's not translated, so Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu translated it. And this verse explains how this Bhumandala, this earthly region, extends all the way out to the edge of the universe, but there's a little gap just between the edge of the universe and the earthly area. So because of that gap, the whole Earth system, all that land, it can move up and down. So this explains how this Earth section was able to sink into the water. Because if it's just a little ball, which we see, like, there's a few paintings where it's depicted and they're really beautiful, but it showed that Lord Bohr has just a little ball Earth on his nose. But we can understand, actually, it's not just the ball, but the whole Earth system. Because if just the ball sunk, it would just fall into more Earth. And then below the Earth planetary system, there's the subterranean heavenly planets, no sunlight gets there, and then the hellish planetary system, and then that ocean with all the water. So it's explained how the earthly region, there's a little section between it and the edge of the universe, so it can sink into that water during this pastime. And then Lord Bohr lifts up the whole Earth section. You can see there's actually many paintings and depictions that have him holding the whole, like, you could say like a whole plate of Earth, a whole section of Earth, not just this little ball.
Yeah, good point, Prabhu. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada, he would often say that, these, on your first point, Srila Prabhupada, he would say, the chicken is a better scientist than you, right? Because they make so much propaganda that, just see, we're like creating life, they like call it creating life in their laboratory, but actually they're taking the elements that are already there and they're just combining them in a laboratory and saying that, oh, just see, we've created life, but they've actually already gotten that seed from somewhere else. So Srila Prabhupada would say, just see how much more intelligent the chicken is, where every day they're able to create one egg, by which in that egg already has all its components together. So you can prove that you're smarter than a chicken by just creating one egg, but just see, they can't even manufacture one egg. They can't even manufacture even like one germ without the potency that's already there of the seed-giving Father. So yeah, it's like all just like a big smoke and mirrors show, but it's really, they're just doing nothing, just cheating people and getting their money.
Pretty expensive.
That's it, yeah, pretty expensive. Giri Prabhu, you had something?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have it's just a comment. It's kind of a crazy story related to the topic of science and book distribution. So I was at UIC with Charan Prabhu, and we were literally about to leave the university, and I was just sitting down, and then this Mataji, she comes over, and she's like, "Oh, I saw your book table." And she kind of scared me, so I turned around. I was like, "Oh, okay." She surprised me. But anyway, she's like, "Oh, I saw your book table yesterday, and I really wanted to talk to you guys, but you guys left." So she's like, "Oh, I saw you guys were about to leave again, so I had to come over." So she came over. She's like, "So what are you guys giving out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're giving out books about Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas from India, ancient knowledge from India." She's like, "Wow, that's crazy." She said that I was literally just in the library, and I was actually looking for stuff like this. I wanted to learn more about Hinduism and Vedic knowledge and stuff like that. And she said, but when I went to the library, they had no books on Hinduism. They had nothing, no books about Vedic knowledge, the Vedas, Upanishads. She said that she was reading the Upanishads or something. But she says there's no books in the library, the college library. All they had was just all these scientific books and all these Christian books and all these other books, but they had not a single. He said, I met one other guy. He said the only book they had for Vedic knowledge is Hinduism for Dummies 101. So and I told her, I was like, you just see how biased the people are. These scientists, these other religions, they're so biased that they only want what they want, or they only want in the colleges and what they study. They only want their point of view. That's it. They just want to cheat people. They don't want to actually give you real knowledge. And then she's like, she was exactly right. She's like, yeah, everything I was saying. She was like, yeah, this is amazing. And then she's like, this is crazy, And she's like, yeah, can I please get these books? And then she got the whole stack. She not only did she get a stack for herself, but she also paid for this random guy. At the same time, came up with her, and they were both there, and and I thought they were friends. It's like, oh no, I don't know this person. But not only did she buy one for herself, but she also paid for the rest for him as well.
Wow!
Because she understood that this knowledge, what I'm trying to give her, is actually real knowledge that she couldn't find anywhere else, and she was just completely shocked. She's like, yeah, I can't believe I was able to find this. It was amazing. So yeah.
That's ecstatic. Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu and I, when we were at Wayne State University in Detroit, I was standing there at the book table, and this one lady comes running up to the table, and she's like, "Oh my God, is this Krishna?" And I was like, we have plenty of books, about, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, I have this one, I have this one. I don't have these ones, let me get these ones." She didn't have a ton of money, being a broke college student, but I think she had 3 books. She didn't have 3 of the books in the bhakta stack, so she gave $5 and I gave her those. And she was so happy. And we can see that by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, one actually becomes happy. One becomes so happy and so inspired just by reading Prabhupada's books, but imagine if we wouldn't have gone there, we wouldn't have been there, so all we have to do is just simply be there. We have to go out there and we have to just carry the books of Srila Prabhupada in our hand and just try and give them to as many people as possible, because otherwise what chance will they have, Even if, not so many people take the books, just that one book that you might have given to somebody might completely alter the entire course of their life. There's like no formula per se that, if I do this amount of bhakti stacks, this amount of saptas, this amount of this, then X amount of people will take up to Krishna consciousness. But we can see we just simply have to be out there with Prabhupada's books to give them this ecstatic mercy, the ecstasies of Srila Prabhupada in his purports. We just have to be out there and people will be so attracted, So many people, they're really looking for this stuff. They're really, really hungry for Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Because now more than ever, so much of this stupid science theories, bogus nonsense is being propagated more than anything. People are so much more dissatisfied. People are so much more upset. So we can actually make them happy by giving them Srila Prabhupada's books. That's like the best thing we can do for them. Charan Prabhu? Yes, Prabhu.
So at the same university, they were doing some, strike. Graduate students, they were doing strike. Strike. They took away our healthcare. Strike like that. And they were saying so many things, all nonsense. But protest. Yeah. And somehow I noticed that during that time, more books went out. How is that?
Meaning like the people that were directly protesting took books, or like?
No, students. I mean,
like first time that Suresh Prabhu and I, we went to Middle Tennessee State University. The day before, or I guess like, we went there on Tuesday or something, and just that last Friday, one of the students had shot and killed themselves in the library. And like, yeah. And like the whole library was like still closed and everything like that. But because of that situation on the campus, people were like pouring to the book table, just like to like take books, and even like this, like the faculty, the police, everything were like, yeah, you guys came at like the perfect time to like give people these books. And Suresh Prabhu and I had like no idea that like this was going on. This was the first time that any of our Krishna Life devotees had ever gone there. But we just like happened to come at that time, and it was like so favorable. Like I remember students just waiting in line at the book table just to like speak with us and get the books, and like so many books went out. I think one day Suresh did like 50-something bhakti stacks or something like that. It was ecstatic, and we can see, different times like that, people might be more inspired to take the books when there's a lot more hardships going on in the world, when, the real finite practicality and reality of our existence really flashes before people's eyes. Most like people, they're just in their own world of ignorance is bliss, just like pretending that nothing's actually going on. But when something like that happens like right before people's eyes, people go, whoa, like maybe I should like take this life a little seriously. So maybe it happens like that. I can't exactly say for sure that that's why people were taking more books, but
maybe they were more inclined to give donations. They saw that, okay, yeah, people are suffering, let's give out more money. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu and I were with His Grace Banabhatta Prabhu, and he was telling us about the first traveling Sankirtan trip he went on, and he actually took Vaisheshika Prabhu on his first TSKP trip. And he said that they were like going through some place in the south, and it was Easter. I think they were going through like Arizona or Texas or something like that. I forget exactly where he said, but he said that it was Easter, and then they had been like distributing books and Back to Godhead magazines like the whole day, and they like drove by some church, and people were just like pouring in. So he says that Vaisheshika Prabhu said, stop, I have an idea. And they just like stood outside of the church just with baskets, and just like people were just coming and just like putting money in their in their baskets. Just like all they did was just like stand out there and just like held the baskets, and people were just like putting Lakshmi in the baskets. And then and there was like hundreds of people, and everybody was like putting at least like $1 or $2. Some would put 5, some would put 10, and then they just stood out there with the baskets. But because people were like more in that mood of, like now is like a time to like support and like give something to some cause, or these people must be with the church, so they gave them money. And then he said when like the last person walked in the door, they just like bolted back to the car and just like drove away. But they got so much Lakshmi that way, and with that Lakshmi they're able to give so many more books. So yes, sometimes it might be like that, like during the Christmas time when we have our marathons, people are a lot more inclined to give donation because they're in that like holiday spirit, so oftentimes, like even at the airport last year, people giving like $100 multiple times in a day, just because, they were like, yeah, like I'm not going to do anything with this $100 bill right now. You seem like a nice man. You can have it. But yeah, we can see, sometimes we can capitalize on these favorable opportunities, and devotees have shown that example. So yeah, I mean, we're out of time now, so. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
There's an inspection guy for the TSKP van coming today. Please, nobody try to distribute stacks of books to him because... Yes, TSKP. It's in the shop. Dude, can we get it back this morning?
What shop?
We need it back because...
He's like coming with the insurance or something?
Huh?
He's
It's the insurance guy, yeah.
You can postpone it.
just say that it like.
Because the thing is, it needs to have like TSKP vans leave on Friday, so they need to like they're like on.
Went to the body shop, they're trying to fix the body of it.
That like big dent.
They're trying to fix the wreck.
Yeah.
That's happening through the insurance or not? Or
Why
is
is it? What's going on? That's why the guy's coming because
Okay, well look, I'm in charge of the vehicles. No one told me anything about this insurance or nothing.
he is in charge.
I was just told to fix the body.